The importance of a transparent sales process for client trust. Why transparency is the new baseline in B2B sales. B2B buyers are dealing with more noise than ever, and they're increasingly unwilling to talk to sales just to understand basics like process, pricing, or outcomes. Gartner found that 61% of B2B buyers prefer a rep-free buying experience, and 73% actively avoid suppliers that send irrelevant outreach, meaning trust can be lost before a first meeting even happens. At the same time, the broader trust climate is deteriorating. Salesforce reports 72% of consumers trust companies less than they did a year ago, and 60% say advances in AI make trust even more important. If your sales motion feels like a black box, especially in outbound-heavy channels like cold email and B2B cold calling, prospects default to skepticism. That's why a transparent sales process is no longer a nice-to-have. It's the operating system for how we reduce no-shows, shorten cycles, and win cleaner deals. Whether you're running an internal SDR team or working with a sales development agency, a cold calling agency, or an outsourced sales team. Trust, not persuasion, is the real differentiator. In modern B2B, trust beats charm and even product fluency. LinkedIn research shows 51% of decision makers rank trust as the #1 attribute they want in a salesperson, which reframes the goal of every call, email, and proposal. Make the buying experience feel safe, predictable, and honest. Transparency is how trust becomes tangible. When buyers can clearly see how you qualify, how you price, what timelines look like, and what you need from them, you reduce anxiety and prevent the silent stall that happens when stakeholders feel uncertain or manipulated. This is especially true for teams doing sales outsourcing or pay-per-meeting lead generation, where the buyer is also evaluating your operating model. If the process feels vague, how leads are sourced, how meetings are defined, how performance is measured, stakeholders assume the worst and treat every result as suspect. Turn an internal sales process into a buyer-facing roadmap. Most companies have stages in a CRM, but buyers never see them. The fix is simple. Publish a one-page, buyer-facing overview of your sales process that you walk through on the first substantive call. When prospects know where we are, what happens next, what we need from you, and how we decide fit, you create momentum and dramatically reduce ghosting. We recommend making the roadmap explicit about responsibilities and exit criteria. For example, what qualifies a meeting handoff from SDR to AE? What information must be confirmed before pricing is discussed? And what your decision points are for moving forward or pausing. The clarity matters because many buying groups now self-serve information and only involve reps when they expect direct value, not ambiguity. This also creates alignment across your go-to-market team and partners. Whether you hire SDRs internally or rely on an SDR agency, the buyer-facing process becomes the shared script that keeps your cold calling services, LinkedIn outreach services, and outbound sales agency efforts consistent and credible. Make pricing transparency a conversion lever, not a negotiation risk. Pricing is the fastest way to build or break trust. Trust Radius found 72% of B2B technology buyers are more likely to purchase when they can access transparent pricing, while 54% say missing pricing on a website makes them less likely to buy. If your model forces buyers to book a demo just to learn whether you're in range, many will choose a more transparent competitor. Transparency does not mean publishing your lowest possible price. It means explaining your pricing logic and typical ranges so buyers can self-qualify, then using discovery to tailor scope rather than to conceal cost. The most damaging pattern we see is "it depends" with no framework, or burying mandatory fees and constraints until late-stage proposals. The same principle applies to outcomes and timelines. Overselling upside while sandbagging risks is a short-term win that creates long-term churn. A transparent proposal should clearly separate what you guarantee versus what you forecast, and it should state assumptions and dependencies upfront, especially in outsourced SDR, cold call services, or list building services, where results are influenced by offer strength, targeting, and speed to lead. Transparency turns sales from a black box into a collaborative project plan the buyer can trust, defend internally, and act on. Transparent outbound starts with relevance and honest intent. Outbound is where trust is most fragile because it's unsolicited by default. Gartner's data is blunt. 73% of B2B buyers avoid suppliers that send irrelevant outreach. The common mistake is running outbound as a volume game. Generic messaging, unclear targeting logic, and vague promises that could apply to anyone. A transparent SDR message explains 3 things quickly: why you chose them, what signal triggered the outreach, and what modest next step you're asking for. That's true whether you're a B2B sales agency, a cold email agency, or an internal team doing B2B cold calling services. The goal is to sound like a professional with a reason, not an automation that's fishing for replies. We also encourage teams to be candid about how they scale personalization. If you use tools, including AI, to draft or tailor messages, own it and emphasize the guardrails: relevance, accuracy, and respectful data handling. Buyers can tell when they're being processed, and honest intent is the fastest way to earn a real conversation. Reporting that maintains trust after the contract is signed. Many relationships fail, not because results are bad, but because visibility is poor. Black box reporting is a common mistake in sales outsourcing. Leaders see top-line meetings booked, but can't see list criteria, messaging, reply quality, meeting outcomes, or where conversion breaks. When the process is hidden, trust erodes and every number gets questioned. The fix is to instrument trust with leading indicators, not just closed won. Track meeting show rate, post-pricing advance rate, reasons deals stall, and how outcomes differ by segment or persona. This also fits buyer expectations for reliable digital experiences. One report notes 84% of B2B buyers say a reliable, easy-to-use online store is critical to maintaining trust. Accuracy and visibility are now table stakes in B2B buying and servicing. At SalesHive, we treat transparency as part of the deliverable, not an afterthought. Clients should be able to see how targeting was built, how outreach performed, and how outcomes connect to pipeline. That's how we keep outsourced programs from feeling like a gamble and help teams confidently scale an outsourced B2B sales motion. Be explicit about data, AI, and review-driven proof. If buyers feel unsure about how you use their data, the deal slows down in security, legal, or procurement, especially in regulated industries. Given that 60% of customers say AI makes trust more important, vague answers about enrichment, automation, or data retention create avoidable friction. The solution is a standard trust packet that explains sources, usage, retention, and opt-out handling in plain language. Transparency is also about letting third-party evidence speak. One 2025 buyer statistic shows 77% of B2B buyers consult user reviews during their purchasing journey, which means prospects will validate your claims externally whether you encourage it or not. When you proactively share reviews, case studies, and what success looks like benchmarks, you reduce the need for buyers to guess. This is where honesty pays compounding returns. If you openly discuss who you're a great fit for, who you're not, and what trade-offs exist, you create stronger internal champions. They can defend the decision because they understand the reality, not just the marketing, and that reduces post-sale disappointment and churn. Next steps. Build a trust-first sales motion that scales. A transparent sales process is a system, not a script. Start by documenting a buyer-facing journey. stages, timelines, responsibilities, and exit criteria. Then reinforce it everywhere. Follow-up emails, proposals, onboarding plans, and reporting. Pair that with indicative pricing ranges and scope examples so buyers can self-qualify without being forced into a demo. Then, operationalize transparency through cadence and review. Run quarterly trust reviews on a few wins, losses, and churned accounts to identify where expectations were misaligned and where the process felt opaque. When you treat trust like a measurable input, you'll see it reflected in leading indicators like meeting show rates, fewer last-minute pricing objections, and cleaner handoffs between SDRs and AEs. Finally, choose partners and tooling that support visibility rather than hide it. If you're evaluating a sales agency, SDR agencies, cold calling companies, or a cold calling team, ask to see the real dashboard, the real definitions, and the real process. Because the fastest way to improve outcomes is to remove uncertainty. That's the standard we build toward at SalesHive, and it's why transparency remains one of the most reliable competitive advantages in B2B.